We've got an interesting governor's race in New Jersey. Now, oftentimes I'm talking about Congress with this important seat that they're obviously going to replace Chris Christie. Those will be some shoes and pants to fill. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, I denounce and reject myself, especially as an overweight American from New Jersey myself. All right, anyways, now we've got a couple of candidates. I'm not going to go through all of them. We have an exclusive on it, all kidding aside, at Young Turks from one of the candidates. And that is Jim Johnson, and he's got a new plank that we are proud to bring you guys here on the Young Turks. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about the person who's currently leading in the polls. His name is Phil Murphy. Now, he's a former Goldman Sachs banker. Here we go again. New Jersey, of course, had a governor, Jim Corzine, who was also a former Goldman Sachs banker. Corzine spent millions of dollars of his own money to buy that race, win that race. And Phil Murphy is now spending a lot of his own money as well to try to win this race. He has spent $18 million so far in this race. That is, of course, way, way more than any of his fellow candidates. Of the 18 million, 15 million of it is his own. You can look at that in two different ways. You can say, man, he really wants to win, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. And to be fair to Phil Murphy, he has not been at Goldman Sachs since 2003. So that's been quite some time. Corzine went straight from Goldman Sachs to roughly speaking, to governor of New Jersey. And then Murphy also served as ambassador to Germany. And of course you do that when you give a lot of money to one party or another, all of a sudden you get a nice ambassador job. He also served, I don't know if this is good news or bad news for those of you at home, as finance chair of the Democratic National Committee from 2006 to 2009. But that was the years that Howard Dean was doing the 50-state strategy. So he did get a lot of money to the state organizations for the Democratic Party. That's the good news. Well, he's also spread a lot of money around in New Jersey. And since 2001, he has given $1.5 million to make sure that all those people appreciated his support. And Star Ledger, writing about it, thinks that that's no big deal. I come to a different conclusion on that, and I suspect a lot of you do as well. They say, and the role his money played is exaggerated by his critics, who say the $1.5 million he donated to the county organizations enabled him to, quote, buy the nomination. No, of course not. When he gave all that money to all those local politicians and they all endorsed him, it was a wild coincidence. That's the thing about politicians. A check appears in front of them, and then they wind up supporting the guy who gave them the check. It happens almost every time, and every time it's a coincidence. It's amazing, man. They should play the lottery or something. What luck. And then the Star Ledger continues, all shades of defending Hillary Clinton here during the primaries. Like, wait, are you questioning Phil Murphy's honor and the honor of the politicians he gave money to? They say, did he buy Senator Cory Booker? Did he buy the Sierra Club? Yeah, kind of. That's how it works. You donate to them, and then they do largely whatever you tell them to do. And so, look, I got no beef with the Sierra Club. God bless their heart. I hope they save the planet. But they also have donors, and does that affect them? Yeah, it affects them a little bit, right? I get how it works. And you, like this whole idea, I can't, that's the thing that drives me crazy about this. We're gonna get to the exclusive in a second. But Star Ledger, come on, man. Are you guys journalists or are you not journalists? You're just gonna take it at face value, like that money, millions of dollars doesn't affect anybody? Like, Cory Booker. Like they say it as if like that solves the issue. We're done with it. Are you saying that Cory Booker would do something for money? Yeah. That's what all politicians do. That's what all the citizens think. And you go out there as if like that settles the case. Well, obviously since Cory Booker, our beloved politician of the establishment, is impeachable, it must be true that all the money that he used to grease everybody in New Jersey didn't affect him at all. Now, I want to be clear about this. I don't know Phil Murphy as a person, and he has some proposals that are better than Republican proposals. No question about it. He would raise taxes a little bit, and he would use it for education. He would use it to protect the pensions. And I'm not saying that Phil Murphy's a bad guy at all. But did he buy the support of all those politicians in New Jersey so he can get their endorsement, so he could be the leading candidate? Of course he did. And maybe he'll be a wonderful governor if he wins, right? But he did buy the race. There's no question that's what happened. And if you're saying that it couldn't have happened because people like Cory Booker are so beyond reproach that if by definition they could not be corrupted, then you're not even a journalist. Come on, what kind of journalist says that a politician can't be corrupted? In New Jersey, of all places? Come on. And in the Star Ledger endorsement of Phil Murphy, it's littered with phrases like, he is sensible, he is practical, he is going to do things that are small changes, but doable, practical, moderate changes. I've seen this movie before, I've seen it before, okay? So now, there's several other people in the race, and I'm not here to endorse anybody. And there's some good folks, including the guy who uncovered the part of the Bridgegate scandal in the first place, et cetera. But we do have an exclusive from Jim Johnson, one of the other folks running in the race. Now, let me tell you about Jim Johnson a little bit. He was Undersecretary of the Treasury in the Clinton administration. He worked at Deborah Boys and Plimpton, which is one of the top law firms. But most importantly, he was chairman of the Brennan Center, which sticks up for progressive ideas as a liberal think tank. I think that's positive. And most importantly, he's been working on policing and criminal justice reform. And that's where we have our breaking news. He has just introduced 2 new planks in his criminal justice proposals. One is to close youth prisons in New Jersey. Wow, that's bold. See, now we're not playing around. This is not small change. He would end youth solitary confinement, increase the use of station house adjustments, and invest in community-based youth programs. So that's big change. And we often talk about criminal justice reform and how we need it in this country. And here's someone who's willing to do it on a significant scale in New Jersey. And a new one he's also announcing is pardons and expungement. So he's created an expedited pardon system for non-violent drug charges, expanding the scope of crimes that can be expunged and shorten waiting times for expungement. The reason you do that is our jails are filled with people who had these non-violent offenses because this insane war on drugs. And he's saying, look, we've found a way to imprison people at record rates, which is absolutely true, and it applies to African Americans and minorities at far, far greater numbers, and then it ruins their chance of getting jobs afterwards if you don't do the pardons, you don't do the expunging of their records. So those are bold proposals and ones that are definitely needed in my opinion, but I like his overall plank on criminal justice overall. This is really his big strength. He's also in favor of diversion and early intervention. He wants to end mandatory minimums so we're not blindly sending people to prison for simple drug use. He believes in re-entry programs and actually working to increase access to educational and vocational training so that people can get reacclimated into their communities in a more productive way. He wants to end the stigma around drug addiction and doesn't want to treat it as a crime, but as a healthcare matter. And very, very importantly at the end there, he wants to legalize marijuana in New Jersey. So look, the establishment media takes that last part as a throwaway. Oh, it's cute, or it's a way to get some younger voters. No. The war on drugs has cost us dearly, trillions of dollars in taxpayer money to imprison all these people. It's caused gang warfare, and then it has imprisoned all sorts of people that never belonged in prison in the first place. It is applied grossly unjustly and disproportionately, as he points out. White people and black people do drugs at the same rate, but especially marijuana. But black people are put in jail for marijuana use at 3.7 times the rate of white people. So that is incredibly unfair. And so there's now more African American males in jail today than there were African American males in slavery at the end of the Civil War. That is unbelievable. And Jim Johnson is saying, look, we have to start ending that gross injustice, and we start where we have power. So if he becomes the governor of New Jersey, those are the reforms that he plans to put in place. On that plank, it sounds great. But I want you guys to go do your own research. Don't just trust the establishment media or necessarily even your local media if they're going around saying that politicians can't be corrupted by millions of dollars in donations. And actually find out what the policy positions of all the 4 major candidates that are in the race and make your own call. I'm proud that Johnson's campaign gave us the exclusive on how they are going to expand their criminal justice reform plank. And so now you have more information about that race. And as a person who lived in New Jersey, grew up in New Jersey and loves New Jersey, I really, really want you to make the right choice, whatever the right choice is for you. Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.